On this Burnout Extra, while I'm amidst working on my Ford 292 V8 engine, I'm actually going to give you a few tips and tricks on what to do when taking apart / rebuilding an engine. There's a few key things that I've learned that honestly would help me a ton if somebody just told me before I started this whole process. One of those is definitely get some what I would call splash pans or oil pans. I actually use Bunsen burner pans that you would use for food. They're much cheaper and much wider, and to be honest, do the job just fine. But as I was rotating the engine, the first thing I did when it was straight up was drain the oil. So I drained that using the drain plug as you would for an oil change. But after that, I truly didn't know how much coolant would come out as I rotated the engine for different things I needed to work on. So what I did was I took the tire top end off of the block, which includes the intake, the cover, and then the heads as well. And from there, you can pretty much tip it, and from one side, you can catch it all in a pan beneath your engine stand. Highly recommend using an engine stand. That would be the best way to do this. Obviously, you want to inspect the block as well. I highly recommend grabbing like a small light or something where you can really just get in and look at every little nook and cranny. When you pull off gaskets, they're going to be smushed into things like the water pump. When you're looking inside, you want to make sure there's no cracks. When you're looking at the valves, you want to make sure they're clean. You want to make sure that the camshaft looks okay, the crankshaft looks okay, and not dinged or damaged, anything like that. Highly recommend a small light. Another thing you're going to want while you're working on it is definitely some brake clean. You can pretty much buy any brand of brake clean. This will evaporate so quick, and especially if you don't have a parts cleaner, it will help you clean a lot of what you take off because there is going to be remnant oil left over inside the engine. Highly recommend this as well. When you're taking apart the engine, there's two things that you're definitely going to want on hand. This number one is a breaker bar. This will pretty much get unstuck any bolts that might be tough simply because there's more leverage. If you need even more leverage than this and you're not worried about the bolt actually breaking, you can actually just slide on a pipe onto the end of this and you'll have much more leverage from out here to getting loose a bolt. As I mentioned, you can crack bolts doing things like that, so be careful. This is actually for putting the engine back together. It does work for breaking bolts as well. I've been told you shouldn't use it for that. But as I mentioned, it's for putting it together. It's called a torque wrench. This will pretty much torque the bolts to spec or to the point of tightness that it needs to be. So as I mentioned, having these two things on hand when you're taking apart and putting together the engine is very key. And then my last piece of advice, which I knew this going in, was label everything. Go out and just buy 4 or 5 Sharpies because they will dry up, and get yourself a roll of masking tape and a bag of plastic bags, just Ziplocs. And I promise you, it will be the greatest lifesaver when you're putting it back together or when you're washing the parts and need them separated, things like that. I have about probably 3 bins like this, all just labeled. And yes, some of them are simple. Yes, I'll remember some of them without even looking at the tags. However, this will help when putting it back together when I'm looking for that one bolt or one nut that I can't remember where I put it. So other than that, I would highly recommend getting yourself a parts engine. If you can find a free parts engine, that will help you greatly because you can actually go to that engine and look at how things come apart or what they look like once they're off. That's helped me a lot. It's helped me see how many bolts are holding something on, things like that. And then afterwards, you can actually sell most of the parts engine for parts and make a little bit of money back. As you know, you want a gasket set and things like that, maybe bearings for your engine, so you can make a little bit of money back when you're selling your parts engine. So as I mentioned, those are the tips and tricks I wish I had known just by starting this. They're very simple, but I promise you it will save you in the long run with a lot of things when rebuilding an engine. That's pretty much it for this Burnout Extra. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to subscribe to our channel and watch as we grow. We also just created a TikTok, so go follow us on TikTok and see some pretty hilarious content of Tarpy and I. So yeah, as I mentioned, follow us on social media and definitely subscribe. And until next time.